Hello, this is book one, for August 2020, Negro President, Jefferson and the Slave Powers by Gary Wills. I wanted to read this one because we're talking about elections and the black vote and what it means, and I want people to understand the history of it. This is going to be a great resource for when you have to homeschool. I'm giving y'all gold. 1800, why were slaves counted? How could the Constitution so disproportionate the apportionment of delegates to the national legislature as to allow a man to gain 300 extra votes in Congress by owning 500 human beings? This offered not only a reward for injustice, but the means for protecting and perpetuating the injustice. As Governor Morris put it during the debates that framed the Constitution, the admission of slaves into the representation, when fairly explained, comes to this: that the inhabitant of Georgia and South Carolina who goes to the coast of Africa and in defiance of the most sacred laws of humanity tears away his fellow creatures from their dearest connections and damns them to the most cruel bondage, shall have more votes in a government instituted for protection of the rights of mankind than the citizen of Pennsylvania or New Jersey, who views with a laudable horror so nefarious a practice. And if slaves were to be represented at all, how did the figure 3/5 become the measure of such misrepresentation? The only way to understand that number, or to see how the very idea of counting slaves in Congress arose, is to look at the way the 3/5 count was first proposed in an entirely different context, as measure of taxation under the Articles of Confederation, where representation was not an issue. It has already been noticed that each state was given in the Articles only one vote in Congress, no matter how many delegates from each state attended the sessions. There was to be no proportionate representation. In fact, despite the revolutionary slogan linking the two, taxation could not follow the rule of representation in this case. If the states were requisitioned for equal amounts of money to correspond with their equal votes, then a little state like Rhode Island would pay as much as New York or Virginia to the defraying of national expenses. How then were financial quotas to be set for the states? The first draft of the Articles, drawn up by a committee of Revolutionary Congress but submitted in the handwriting of John Dickinson, said that Article 11, that funds for war and other expenses shall be supplied by several colonies in proportion to their number of inhabitants of every age, sex, and quality, except Indians not paying taxes. How was the number of inhabitants to be ascertained? The document proposed that they shall be triennially taken and transmitted to the Assembly of the United States. This offered little help in the immediate circumstances when taking a census was impossible because of the war. When armies shifted the population about and the enemy occupying places to be surveyed. Besides, by including those of every quality but one, Indians, the draft proposed counting slaves, both indentured and chattel, both white and black. The southern states, which would be urgent for counting slaves later on, when it would boost their representation, were opposed to counting them at all when it boosted taxes. This was, they claimed, taxation without representation. The South therefore mobilized against the draft's Article 11. Samuel Chase of Maryland said that only free whites should be counted. The slaves were property comparable to such property held in the North as cattle, horses, etc. If the southern states paid according to the slave population, they would be taxed according to Jefferson's notes on these debates, according to their numbers and their wealth conjunctly, while the northern would be taxed on numbers only. John Adams answered the laborers, free or slave, would be taxed under the system proposed, and the condition of the laboring poor in most countries, that of the fishermen, particularly of the northern states, is as abject as that of slaves. An argument that would come back in a far different context years later, when John Calhoun equated southern slaves and northern laborers. So we get into tax and our bodies. Um, as you can see, this country was built on and built around and framed around black bodies. So black people should never be ashamed of yourself. You should never be have low self-esteem and all this other foolishness. So just stop it. So what, we haven't been treated well, but that doesn't mean we're not worthy. You guys got to get that crazy ideas out of your head. Thank you for your support, and until next time, take care of your mind, take care of your body, and please be safe. Please.